Okay, folks, this is Holly Short's interview number 3 with Matt Sheldon. I'm super excited about this movie and, of course, about having him on this morning. So, Matt, thank you for taking the time to talk to me this morning. I have a number of different questions, but before I get to the film, I want to talk about you and some of the work that you've done in the past. You are the owner of Aesthetic Production Company. I want you to talk to me a bit about, because I like to teach filmmakers during these interviews as well. Tell me a bit about camera usage because we don't talk about that a lot. We don't talk about what directors prefer to use, what they prefer to stay away from. And moreover, where do you stand on the newer technology? And do you think that those are as efficient per se as some of the older use cameras?
Sure. So digital is is here forever now.
Mhm.
We're never going back to 100% film. Film, I believe, will always be around. Classic analog filmmaking will not go away, and digital gives you particularly high resolution. So we shot on an Arri Mini LF signature prime lenses. This is the same camera package that was used for 1917. Extremely high resolution lenses, amazing camera. Was not cheap, but actually that additional resolution. So for people who are interested, it was a shot of 4.5K open gate Arri RAW. So that's the best resolution. That's the highest quality codec you can shoot at, which means you can blow the image up. And in the film, we move the camera to move in one shot on the actor's face, but actually only 1/3 of that shot was a camera move. The 2/3 of the push in was done in visual effects. And hopefully that is hard to spot or not noticeable.
Hmm.
And actually, because you're looking at what she's doing and how engaging she is, I hope people don't see it. But you couldn't do that with you. We wouldn't have been able to do that on 35mm or Super 16 because the resolution is so high and because the Arri does such a great job of rendering skin tones. Yeah, it's a beautiful image. So because you have a beautiful image at high resolution, you can really explore the actor's performance and her face and get really close to her emotion. So digital it's here forever.
That's an interesting comment that you're making. I was talking to a filmmaker the other day, and I do know of somebody who tried to shoot on 8mm, which I find fascinating because I like the older
Sure.
movies and things like
Mm.
that. To a younger filmmaker, would you ever suggest to them going outside of the box a little bit and experimenting, whether it's with cameras or maybe with CGI or
100%.
animation?
Yeah, 100%. Because the camera we used was the right camera to tell that story. I think when I was made some of my earlier films, I certainly spent too long thinking about technology. Technology is incredibly seductive. You know, the
Mhm.
latest camera, the latest resolution, and I'm seduced by that as much as anyone. But shooting on Super 16 or Super 8 or VHS or mini DV, these are all languages that help set a mood and a tone and an atmosphere which can be right for a story. David Finch spent a long time creating the look for Mank. Now, he didn't shoot on film, he shot digitally,
Right.
I think on Red, which is his preferred camera. But he spent an long time creating the look, and his DP spent many months getting that look right. That look is all part of the storytelling. But if that's at the expense of getting the film made, we're defeating ourselves. You know,
Sure.
we shouldn't be saying, "Oh, I can't get this camera. I need this camera to tell the story." I mean, there's lots of ways to tell a story, and it does. A component of that is the camera, 100%. But you won't know until you try those different formats because they all feel different,
Sure.
right? Um,
Absolutely. I want to have a piggyback question to that. Drones. Where do you stand on that? Because I find a lot more and more people are saying to me that they've incorporated drones in their filming.
Amazing tool. Suddenly we can do all these shots, but does the shot does the shot service the story? And that's the thing. It's like that bird's eye view, and it's not always bird's eye view. I mean, drones can get incredibly close and go places where cameras couldn't go before. But if we're all using the technology in the same way, is that surely impacting on how we're telling our stories? So yeah, it's a great tool. but it has to be in service of the story. And they can do things you can never do before. There's still shots that drones can't do though. It's still something that I think we can still get more out of using drones in a certain way to tell stories in a different way. There's a Radiohead had a music video out 6 months ago, and there's this tiny, tiny, tiny drone. It's like a toy. It's about this big, and they didn't hire a director of photography. Well, they did have a director of photography, but to pilot it, it was like this 17-year-old gamer, 18-year-old gamer, and this drone could fit through letterboxes. It was a tight, and it made the video feel a certain way that no other tool could have made that video feel. And so the tools are amazing, but photography on its own isn't storytelling.
Oh, you betcha. Absolutely. Obviously, I'm a writer myself, so storytelling is hugely important. One of the things I want to ask, and the electricity in me is personal to you. So, talk to me a bit about doing stories. Obviously, there's a personal angle for this one versus doing a story that's not so close to you. Do you prefer something that you can relate to when it comes to storytelling?
I suppose making this film has been a revelation for me because I had never been willing to share any of my story until now. And actually, I would say people were never that interested in my films until I was willing to share something,
Oh,
actually.
really? Really?
So this has been a complete revelation of being willing to talk about something that is real and something that is true. And a major inspiration for me is a writer and a director's coach and a thinker, really, human emotion and acting, called Judith Weston. So
Hmm.
Judith Weston is a big deal for me. She's a legend. She has tutored, supported, inspired some of the best directors of the last 20 years, including Ava DuVernay, Steve McQueen, and many others. And she says a lot about if you're not willing to share who you really are and that causes you pain and everything that's good about you and everything that's evil about you, that's bad about you, if you're not willing to bare your soul, you shouldn't really be a filmmaker. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. That's not what she said
Right.
precisely, but the intent is basically, if you're not willing to talk about who you are, your films will never really have the edge, the meaning that they need to have. For the first time, I applied that to making this film, and it kind of changed things for me, really.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. A lot of filmmakers and myself, I struggle. I run a festival myself, and I see all these beautiful projects, and filmmakers are always frustrated with the fact that they feel like they don't get seen until a certain something happens, till this
Yeah,
landmark or this or this.
yeah.
So my question to you as a creator is, how do you feel, or what would you advise? How does a filmmaker really get seen, not only by the general public, but feel as though they're seen themselves?
I suppose my experience has been on this particular film is, I mean, we hear the our heroes, our directors that we admire, and the writers we admire, talking about, you know, keep your head down, do your thing, be true to yourself, tell the stories that matter to you, and people will listen to you one day. I mean, that's what we're told, and with that, most of them also talk about how much hard work it is because you kind of just got to keep going. And I suppose there's something Jim Cummings said. So Jim Cummings made a short film called Thunder Road and then made it into a feature. Famously won at South by Southwest. He said this thing about making features. He said this thing is no one is going to read your script. No one is going to help you. You have to do it on your own. No one's going to help you. If you can't figure out how to do it on your own, you kind of you're going to struggle. Now there are always the geniuses. There's always the people who have made incredible music videos or commercials or other pieces of work, which means that they move into features and they have a gilded life. But actually, I don't believe that happens anymore. I think now I still believe shorts are a great way into making features personally, but there are many other routes that people become filmmakers. But to be seen, I still think you have to be making material that you really, really care about. And if you don't care about it, no one else is going to care about it.
Oh, agreed. Agreed. Definitely.
And if you can't defend it, and you can't tell your story and have a burning desire to tell your story, and you need that burning desire to get you through those long dark nights when really, no one's helping you, no one's ringing you back, you've had some dispute about some piece of rental equipment that's going to cost you money or whatever else is going on. Yeah, you need to be so sure of your story and why you have to tell your story to get you through those times. I don't think I've answered your question, but
No, I think you have answered my question, to be honest with you. It makes a lot of sense. If somebody listens to the answer, they'll get it. So you did what you
sure.
needed to do.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I saw in the past, of course, that you've done 12 different projects. I see the majority of which are shorts, and you've done a few documentaries. So I'd like to
Yeah.
talk a bit about doing documentary style filmmaking.
Sure.
It's certainly not for everyone. Most people may or may not understand it's a different type of filmmaking. So
Yeah.
talk to me a bit about not only the reward of doing documentary filmmaking, but is there one particular thing that you've noticed that is the most complicated part of that type of filmmaking?
Yeah. I mean, people who are not actors aren't always used to speaking on camera. So that's the thing, because you bring a camera to a room, it changes people, and the only balancing force in that room is you. So you really have to be that aura, that person, that thing, that spirit in the space, which means they're not thinking about camera and they are thinking about the truth that you want them to tell. The short documentaries I've made, I think, have been really beneficial for me just to be used to being in a space and photographing a human. That's never a waste of time. You always learn something. But I think the other thing is more importantly is spending time with someone to find out who they are and get into the soul of what they're about. There was one piece I did, and it's not publicly available, and it was about these three or four guys who were talking about how they'd become drug addicts and alcoholics, and it was a public information film. Actually, it was for a concrete company who wanted to use it to scare their truck drivers not to take drugs. So on the face of it, not the most meaningful of assignments, but actually these guys really bared their souls. And you do have to find things that will unlock them. So I had them bring photographs of people they'd hurt or had been impacted by their actions, and we photographed that, and they held this picture. And this one big burly guy, he was holding a picture of his mother, and he was talking about how he'd been an alcoholic who in he was in so deep that his mother got very ill, and he fell apart. So being in a room with someone a human being who's willing to be so real with you, that's good stuff,
Absolutely.
because that's real stuff. That's real. That real emotion is good for your instincts about when it comes to directing actors. I think it just sharpens your instincts about when you're hearing something that feels true, and when hearing something that maybe that's a bit manufactured. That moment, you're acting there, but in this moment, you're not. And we can analyze all this stuff, but actually, it's just a feeling. It's just you either know it or you don't.
Sure.
And definitely, I'm still learning. I'm still training myself to listen to that stuff. And it's that still quiet voice, right?
Yes.
That little voice. And I think documentaries are a great place for that.
I was just sitting here thinking to myself, I wonder if you had, because of course the electricity in me has to do with your life and your story. I was trying to picture what Matt would look like if he were in front of the camera. How would he advise himself, or how would that have
Yeah,
gone if you had interjected
yeah,
yourself into that? Or
yeah.
had you have considered that at all? Maybe plopping yourself in there somewhere?
Funny enough, someone has already proposed, or not proposed, suggested, oh, if you want to make this into a bigger story and
Mhm.
as a feature about making it a hybrid documentary drama, I don't know yet. Though I'm certainly starting to write a feature.
Sure.
And I'm a massive admirer of American Animals, Bart Layton's American Animals, where the real people who created the story and the situation that the film talks about and explores. I don't know, me in front of a camera, still a bit shy, I think, really. But it does make you think. When do you, if where do you, each project we've got to find ways to tell these stories differently.
Yes.
We've got to find ways. So whether it's inserting yourself into it in some way, whether it's your soul or your physical form, we're not going to audiences. They have so much to watch. So how do we stand out? They have so much, and there's such good work out there. Not all of it's amazing. The sheer volume is tough enough. I mean, I remember like 15, 20 years ago, there was a statistic that there were 10,000 shorts made globally. Maybe that
Wow.
was 20 years ago. Now, I would say that number's like 500,000.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
Holly Shorts had 5,000 submissions. Sundance gets 12,000 submissions.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know that. Wow.
And the other big festivals get 5, 6, 7, 8,000
Sure.
submissions. So if me being in the film would help get the film made, sure, but I don't think that's the case.
Oh gosh, I see now. I disagree with you. I think every story stands out, period, because it is, especially in the documentary world, it's someone's story and that's unique to
Yeah,
someone, and that will be
yeah.
relatable to at least so many people. So I do think every story
Good
stands
point.
out.
Good point.
But I'm an indie girl. Go to Hollywood and
Yeah,
tell them that. Did you hear that,
yeah.
Hollywood? That's right. The indie world stands out too. I'm just a big believer in that good stuff.
100%.
There you go. Now I want to talk a bit about where you're from. Tell everybody where you're from.
So I live in East London, which you can see behind me,
Yes, I can.
and I've lived in East London for 25 to 30 years. I grew up in the Midlands. I was born in London, and that is where my story started, and that's where my story started that led to the electricity in me.
Now, I want to ask a question about London. I've unfortunately not been able to get there yet, but we've all kind of been living in the same bubble, so to speak, for the last 2.5 years. And I've
Sure.
talked to different filmmakers about this. Tell me a bit about how London has fared in terms of, obviously you shot a production, right? So clearly,
Yeah.
depending on what time of year you shot it, of course, there were complications with that. And
Yeah.
not only that, how are you guys doing just mentally, financially, etc.? Have you guys been hit really hard with everything going on?
Definitely 2020 complete shutdown. It was
Sure.
like the rest of the global situation. Mainstream high-end TV and features restarted mid to late 20. Actually, I think it was Mission Impossible. Actually, restart was the first to
Oh,
restart,
gotcha.
with its star remonstrating with the conduct of members of the team on set. And I think that was at Pioneer Studios. Fast forward to 2021 when we shot this in October. So everything's bouncing back, but I could not find crew. So I must have spoken to 20 production designers before I found
Wow.
someone to design it, because everyone was catching up. Production wise was catching up again. Though I did find a production designer who'd worked on Gladiator and who's Emmy nominated and who's just designed Sam Mendes' new film Empire of Light. So and I rang him and he was in Prague and he goes, "Oh, I think I can squeeze this in." And we really got on. He's called Adam O'Neill. Although it was tough to find the right people, because of the sort of the way the industry was reacting and recovering. It was okay. It just took a lot of energy, and I also took the view that I was going to build my own team. So I worked with someone called Nalima Yasmin, who had worked on another film of mine, who hadn't produced, I don't believe, before, but I just had an inkling that she would be incredibly, well, apart from incredibly supportive, be incredibly able and efficient and understanding and supportive to tell this story with me. So we kind of built a team from the ground up. Heads of department were tough to find though,
Sure.
because it was still the industry is still being catching up and recovering from the
Right.
previous 18 months.
I get it. So let's talk about the electricity in me. Since you brought up the set, that's one of the things, obviously, that I just absolutely adored, because when you
Sure.
watch the movie, and I don't want to give too much away, I try to be as secretive as I can. The
Thank
set
you.
design is pretty incredible just because of the fact that it's not every day that you get to see what I envision to be an older, we're looking at the 60s, or to me, it looked like the 1960s with this room that you have built,
Yeah, yeah,
etc.
yeah,
So I love the nostalgia. I also love the clothing, the way, just the entire
yeah,
backdrop of how the story is set. So talk to
yeah.
me a bit about, was that your vision, or did you collaborate with the set designer and kind of put that together, or is that something
Sure,
collaborative?
sure, sure. 100% it was collaboration, but the idea that it would be set in the 70s and it would be set in a time where the lead character is going to tell her story at a key moment in the story and a key moment in her life. Yeah, that started with me, and that room was actually only 2 kilometers down the road from me. I mean, I went all over London to find this room. It was
Wow.
empty. Adam, his art director, set dresser, Rosalind Gregoire, they dressed it, but the room itself, in terms of the slats on the windows, the carpet, those hardwood walls, that aesthetic was all from the location, and it was location literally around the corner from me. It was an old engineering works, and it was a boardroom, and they'd fitted it out in the 70s, and I think made a couple of amendments in the 80s, but they were all original fixtures and fittings. This beautiful, like lampshade. Yeah, as soon as I walked in the room, I just fell in love with that room, and it cost us more than I thought I was going to spend, but it was just it just makes the film, right? It
Absolutely.
makes because the setting of the film tells us about the period, and the period that the character is talking or talking to us from, it was entirely relevant to what she had just gone through, and that was important to not set it in the 90s or 2000s. To talk about what she talks about and speaking from the past was really important to us. But when it came to actually filling the space with those elements, Adam and Roz, yeah, they're incredible collaborators. I mean, the storytellers, I think we don't quite understand, or I've just started to understand what storytelling is with these objects. These with clothing. Clothing was designed by Sarah Byrne. Sarah Byrne actually hasn't designed for film before. She's a fashion designer. Um,
Nice.
she she works. She's worked for Kanye West's fashion brand and many others.
Hmm.
And her daughter had been in a film of mine previously, and I just sort of, and this was the point I was making about creating your own team, building your own team, that Sarah hadn't designed for film for, but I just had a sense. And actually, she loves the 70s, and she said
Hmm.
it's her favorite era. And she came with this whole wardrobe and gave the actor Alora Torkia all these options to choose from. And I thought that was really interesting that the actor was given the choice to choose her costume. I mean, obviously we all talked about it, but she gravitated towards a particular, that cardigan, which is that kind of those stripy colors which are just so perfect. I mean, everything that Sarah bought was perfect for the era, but it was important to me and to Sarah actually that Elora chose what she wanted to wear, because I sort of, you've got to build those layers of the story together.
Absolutely. I noticed that when you do your storytelling, you chose in your film to do a combination of, you have words, then you have pictures, then it goes to the actual film itself. And I find it an interesting dynamic, doing this three different ways. Why do that? Because I could see where you literally could have done all the words to a backdrop of the film itself. So back and forth between pictures, or
Yeah,
excuse me, words and
yeah,
film, and then
yeah,
not integrate the pictures. So why use that
yeah.
technique?
I don't think I'm going to give an entirely satisfactory answer, but I will say, but I will say, we did not have the words, or we didn't plan to shoot in Canada because it was shot on location.
Oh,
We
okay.
didn't have the words. Actually, we just shot Alora first, the London stuff, and then
Okay.
I realised, oh, we need a counterpoint to this. We need to know where she came from, the land she came
Right.
from
Sure.
the prairies, and then we shot that, and I still felt I didn't have enough. And actually, for what is a very simple film, took us on and off 6 months to edit, because interleaving the words and the landscape and the words from the diaries and the letters and they are verbatim words, direct quotes. It took us a very long time to figure it out, actually, about which words to use where and where. So we got
Okay.
to edit version 33 before we finished. We worked on it a very, very long time. So
Sure.
the editor, Lucy Berry, who's with Final Cut, the same place that cut Riz Ahmed's film, the Oscar-winning film, just displayed this incredible patience to 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 play with all these elements until we found something that landed for us. But it took it's just it is an iterative process,
Absolutely.
and you just need to be patient. I mean, there was a few dark moments halfway through where it just wasn't working really. I mean, it was fine. The performance was the performance, and that still worked.
Absolutely.
But you kind of don't have all the elements, so you know that you think, well, the sound that's going to give you something, and the music, well, that's going to give you something, and
Sure.
the visual effects, that's going to give you something, and the color grade, that's going to give you something. All those elements, and you're trying to think about those the basic storytelling blocks and these other elements, these other layers that are going to give you the whole story. It was pretty tough, actually.
Oh, I imagine so. I also noticed within the course of telling the story, which was surprising to me, you did not give a face or an image or words that I can remember to talk about the monster. The monster is basically non-present. I mean, his presence is
Yeah,
there, yes,
yeah,
but you
yeah,
didn't give a visual to him. And
yeah,
I was surprised by that. Was that
yeah.
intentional or did you feel it served the story better?
Oh, that is a good question. I mean, I think for me, this is definitely part of my journey. Is that I've always found it easy to talk about my birth mother. She is she's she's an angel, right?
Yes.
But my birth father, who I don't like calling him that, I'd rather call him my biological father. So what's that about? I don't know. What did he do? She was 28 years in further research, actually, after the film. He was 28 years older than she was.
Oh gosh.
Now, what happened at that university? Now, I don't know.
Right.
And actually, he was a moderately successful theatre academic and historian. He wrote a book that Sir Peter Hall wrote the foreword to. Sir Peter
Mhm.
Hall is Rebecca Hall's father.
Okay.
So he knew that he was a note. You can still buy his book on My Birth Father. You can still buy his book on Amazon, right? And actually, since making the film, I've done some more research about the different years. So he probably lectured at five, six, seven, eight universities across North America, in the US and Canada. I'm just thinking, oh yeah, so why did you keep moving around? So this isn't answering your question. Why isn't he in the film? And I think for the monster to be unseen, but to know the malevolent impact of what he did felt right to me.
It was a good choice, actually. But I, of course, had to ask the question because you almost have to ask that question. Some
Yeah,
of us put faces to demons or things that are
yeah,
hurtful or harmful, and sometimes
yeah.
that helps, and sometimes it helps an audience. But I think you did. It was a perfect choice, actually.
Well, thank you. And actually, that phrase, "my monster," is that's true and real. That's what she used to call him.
Right. And I remember you saying that within the course of the film. During this film, some of the predominant themes, at least from what I listened to and what I heard, besides, of course, sadness and regret, you have trauma, you have guilt, you have self loathing, you have frustration, anticipation. There's a lot. There's a lot that this woman says. So I'm curious to ask you, why did you pick that particular she to tell the story? What did she have that would bring out this beautiful woman to you?
The actor, you mean?
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
I had the opportunity to meet Alora through a mutual friend, and I didn't have a film. I didn't have anything for her. I just knew I was going to meet her,
Ah,
and I thought I just got to. I can't miss this opportunity. She had a small role in Midsummer, actually, but kind of an iconic little role. It's Connie in Midsummer. If you've seen Midsummer, completely terrifying film.
oh,
And then she had a bigger film. Then she was in Ben Wheatley's In the Earth, which I'd watched at Sundance, and then she's another film, Alien Ava, which got a lot of attention. Been tracking Alora for a while, but I did not have this film written, and I just knew 2 days before meeting her, I was going to have to write. So I can't go to this meeting with nothing and
Sure.
go, "Oh, it's nice to meet you." So I wrote basically the dialogue for the most of the dialogue that's in the film. And when I sat down with her, I brought to her the diary, my mother's diary, and said, "This is the dialogue, and it's based on some of the things that are in these diaries. And would you be interested?" So I kind of figured that Alora was going to go, "Okay, I'll take this away, and I'll let you know in 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years whether I'm interested." Actually, she read it in front of me, which was wonderful and terrifying. Literally read it, took it out of my hands. I was like,
Oh,
and so she's reading it. I'm thinking, oh, she's actually reading it. And so she read it, looked through the diaries, and said, "I'll do it."
look at
Like
that.
cold. And then so, I mean, Laura is a huge talent. She's incredibly skilled. She is an amazing artist and a gentle soul. And the things she said when we met that first time and since, I just thought, you just understand the soul of who my birth mother was. And it's
Mm.
as simple as that. It's about feeling. It's about that instinct that I talked about earlier. She just had her soul. She was incredibly vulnerable, incredibly open with me about why the film meant something to her and why the character meant something to her. And she yeah, I mean, we were down. We were due to rehearse for 3 full days before we shot. So we had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to rehearse, and we'll shoot on Thursday, right?
Right.
She came on Monday at 10 o'clock. She did it once
Hmm.
with all the feeling and heart and commitment and truth that you see in the film. I'm like, whoa. Did it again, slightly interrupted by some line dancing community class next door to us. And after a third time, I'm like, right, we don't need to rehearse anymore. So we just stopped. I talked to her on Tuesday, talked to her on Wednesday. We didn't rehearse because she just had it. It was in her and her
Some
preparation. But with that artistry comes the hard work. So she told me that she had read and ingested those lines. She'd done it 100 times before we met. This is a proper craft, right? Proper
absolutely.
stage, proper stagecraft, and that's why she can hold that shot. And it's one shot. Although we cut away, it's the same take. It's take three
Okay.
on the day. It's one shot, and you can only do that when you know your character and the human that you're becoming actually.
Absolutely. Well, and combine it with, of course, great writing. There are tons of different moments within the course of that small film where it has the audience really sinking. The one that got me was, when she was talking about bleaching the life out of her. That
Sure.
was it. And I'm not too proud to admit I cried. I mean, this is not a film that's easy to watch. It's difficult and it's tense and it has many many moments, especially from a female perspective and being a mother myself, that all of us can have empathy for and understanding for. I want to ask this question.
Thank, thank you, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. I know that your birth mother passed away at a young age, 37. If your mother were here now, what do you think she would say about your production?
I mean, her sisters have said to me, who I'm close with, Fern and Ruth Ann, they have given their blessing, as I said. So, what would Joan say? I like to think that I have enough integrity that if I thought she would have been not happy to do it, I wouldn't have done it. But I don't know. I've taken a
Yes.
risk. I've taken
Yes.
a risk. The character that Alora plays is a facsimile of who I feel my birth mother is. She isn't actually my birth mother because there was only one Joan Stockdale.
Right.
But Alora gets as close as Laura played her in a way that made her be Joan for me in that moment. She was incredibly creative. She wrote poetry all the time. The guy that gave me her diaries 10 years after she died, Malcolm, he'd never read any of the diaries. He gave me a box full, literally a
Mm.
box full, 5 years worth. This story is really based on the last three on reading the last 3 months of her diaries just before she died in hospital. She had a sense of humor. She was complex. She was difficult. She was stubborn. She used to fight with him all the time, but her letters and her diaries talk about me in a way that they're wonderful. You know,
Mm.
most adoptive people don't have what I have. I'm incredibly lucky.
Sure.
They talk about there's some historical context which is relevant in that Canada's government had a secret policy of forced adoption. So
Mhm.
if you were unwed and pregnant in the 50s and 60s and into the 70s, you were not meant to be a mother, and you were spirited away to be in religious institutions where they basically took your baby off you. Now, I believe Joan knew that on some level, and she came
Mhm.
to London to give up her baby in the way that she chose, that she was in control of, and that she would have some form of contact. And those letters talk about, I wanted to know Matthew one day. She pretty much said, I believe that we should be together, and I believe that I know him. So I suppose I have that her. Do I know that she loved me? Yes, I do. Was she artistic and would she understand the creative expression? I believe she would. But actually, I still think she'd have a lot to say about it. And I think she'd probably tell me off as well, right?
Look at that, my gosh. Well, folks, let me just say, tomorrow night's the big night, of course. I know that people can attend virtually, correct? So if you're in LA, of course, Holly Shorts, you can see the movie The Electricity in Me tomorrow. And of course, I believe on the virtual platform as well, you can watch it. It's 10 minutes long and it's a beautiful, I want to call it a beautiful love story. And not just about your birth mother, but just your discovery and your reinvention of her on some level. So I highly recommend seeing this, of course. I don't want to forget to ask this. So after Holly Shorts, where's the film headed?
It's going to be in Burbank International Film Festival on the 9th of September. It's
Okay.
going to Cinefest Sudbury in Canada,
Nice.
which actually I'm starting to realise is kind of a big deal. I'm kind of excited. I'm excited it's showing Canada. Just today we've been accepted into the Norwich Film Festival in England, which is a
Oh,
BAFTA accredited
yes.
festival, and one other an art house festival, which is really cool in Arlington in Boston called the Lonely Seal Festival.
Oh,
So we've been accepted in the fire, which we're really excited about.
that's so exciting. And did you submit to Sundance?
We did.
Did you hear yet?
They don't notify till November,
Oh,
December.
that's right.
So,
Okay, so you're just pins and
so
needles waiting.
well, yeah, yeah. I try not to think about it, right?
Absolutely, you bet. Now, I also want to read this off. Now, the gentleman we've been speaking to, it's Matt, M-A-T, by the way, and last name is Sheldon, S-H-E-L-D-O-N. Let me just read off the ways that I found you. You were on LinkedIn, you were on Vimeo, you're on IMDb, and of course, the production company, the website is AESTHETIK.film, and of course, your Instagram, which is MAT_Sheldon. Any other place to find you?
I think you got it covered.
I try very hard. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Matt.